course, I can't do the whole bit with the scene and.
Alright, I'm starting my live, so it's live. We are live on mine. That way we're ready.
To remember to divide my cross-eyed attention to various cameras. Well, good Sunday morning to everybody. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. I remember years ago, Paul Harvey used to, on his radio broadcast, in celebrating mothers and motherhood and womanhood, he would say, be sure to get your mother a dozen roses for Mother's Day, and if you're adopted, get her 2 dozen. There are many people in our lives too who have never been mothers, and Mother's Day may be a time of bittersweetness. I hope that everybody, if you're a woman and you haven't had the blessing of being a mother, perhaps you've claimed nieces and nephews, or you have friends' children. There is no doubt if you love children, you have found someone to be a mother to, and I know that they've expressed that to you. I came to understand, even many years before my own mother passed away, that as a pastor I saw a lot of people who the celebration of Mother's Day was a sadness to them because their wife or their mother was no longer with them and she was only a memory. They would see her again because of her faith in Christ, and that was their hope. But still, there are many ways and things to look at. Also, there are many people who have been or become biological mothers who were never worthy to be mothers, and so perhaps there are people who do not have, who have awful memories of a terrible childhood. That's all great possibilities of life. But when mothers and womanhood is as God intended it to be, it's a wonderful thing, because women are very loving and caring, and they are very tender-hearted often. They are many ways. We can't think of them stereotypically as being one way or another, but grateful for them because they are different than us, different than men, and different than fathers in wonderful ways, Well, during the month of May, we encouraged all of our friends and family members to, if they could possibly, to try to celebrate their birthdays all in one week. So we'd like you to do that again next month. Randy Wentz is here with us, and he did not cooperate, but he was close. His birthday was on near the last of April. So did I hear you say, or someone say that you are 65 or 64 now?
65.
All right, I thought I was older than you. I thought you just turned now just 64. All right, 65. So you're 65. Well, you can retire now if you want to. You can quit going to work. Start drawing a check. But Monday, which was the 4th, was Shannon Ward's birthday. The 8th was Kerrigan Sizik, his daughter's birthday. I don't know how old Kerrigan is now. How old would you guess? Maybe 13? Is she a teenager yet? Possibly. She's certainly, these kids grow up so fast. Kerrigan was on the 8th. Also, Edna Whitman's birthday was on the 8th, and then yesterday, the 9th, was Alan Dotson's birthday. And so we've done everything we can to kind of reach out to them in various ways. We haven't, someone said we didn't mention one in a one call, but we did it in a dozen other ways. So we're going to sing happy birthday to those folks. And I've got one more for the choir. Randy's going to help us sing that today. He's here today because he didn't want to miss the Mother's Parade. We'll tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. Let's sing happy birthday to these. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. Well, putting God bless you in there instead of someone's name still mystifies Avery. And I don't know if she'll ever sort it out, but we've tried to every way in the world we can possibly to explain it. She'll just have to grow into it. But anyway, happy birthday to all those folks. Again, happy Mother's Day. We had a drive-by. We had a lot of activity. We had people who showing up long before the marked hour, and that was okay too. We were ready for them. and people driving by, we were able to get share cards, candy, and flowers with all the mothers who came by, and all those who were going to see their mothers later on. Also, we took names, and we're going to make a drawing. We have 3 gift cards that we're going to be giving away to the mothers who drove by today, and so we're going to be mailing those out to people. I asked Terry Ward to take care of that for us, and so we're grateful for her part in that. Chandra Dotson bought our flowers and got them for us. They were here waiting for us. Danny and Liz and Terry helped put them together. Of course, gloved up and masked up and all sanitized and everything. They did that Friday night, and so it was sitting here ready and waiting. The girls are still out front because it is just now a little after 11. We may have still a few more people who drive by, and if that is so, then that is good too. They are ready. Randy didn't want to miss the Mother's Parade, so I went and got him, and gloved up and masked up too, so we wouldn't have any special contact with him when we were rolling back when we after the end of this service. Thanks again to Andy Crow, who's with us. Danny Bain is going to sing for us here in just a minute, but our producer is Andy Crow. I guess we have to call Randy our co-producer today. I always wondered what a co-producer, maybe he's the best boy, I don't know. We'll find out. But we're glad that you're here today. Terry is suggesting that we do the drawing now. Let's, if you want to do that live, come on in. We can do that. I hadn't thought about that, but could we get a bigger trough for the drawing? Okay, we'll just use this one then. So, I used to. What is this? What number is this? I used to say what number a bucket or a tub was.
It ain't a number 2 washed up.
It's not a number 2 wash tub. This is like a 0.5 or something like that. Anyway, all right, gift cards. Here we go. We've got a separate card in here for everybody. And I'm just going to grab one. They're all folded up so I can't tell. Do we have a drum roll? Okay, give those to Danny too. And we're going. I have no. All right, now there was a friend or relative, someone. We were trying to be socially distant today, but there was someone with James Ward today named Lucy, and she we drew her name just right out and didn't learn her last name. So we'll give that to James and let him make a presentation. Okay, stirring just a little bit more. As I said, these are Mother's Day gifts. And we did give them to all the women. We're honoring motherhood and womanhood today. All right, and Beth Skidmore. Beth Skidmore. She was here with the kids. The kids were in the back seat. Cayman is here. But I'm glad, happy for her that she is one of our gift card winners. Anybody that has been socially distant with 3 or 4 kids deserves a gift card. All right, here we go. Let's see. All right, just one. Here we go. Who's it? And Terry Bain. It must be a rigged operation. It must be. It's a rig. It's a rig. Okay. So there, Terry Bain, Beth Skidmore, and Lucy. All right. Good deal. That we're going to get these to them, and so thanks for Terry and Liz for finishing up. As the traffic ceased, I'm assuming, since we haven't having the drawing. All right, good deal. Well, I have I'm going to go out on a limb today. There are different kinds of magic, stage magic. You know, that's floating ladies, sawing the woman in half, tigers. I thought about doing some of that, but then there is parlor magic, and that's where it's in kind of a small room. I've mostly done parlor magic all my life, but my favorite passion is what you would call close-up magic, and so that's not always easy to do. I have a close-up magic trick today, and how does that look on your camera there, Andy? Can you see this mat a little bit? This is kind of where some of the action is going to take place. I can see it on mine, and I'm going to hold everything up. I want to make a point today. This is a coin trick, and usually this is not the kind of trick that I could do because when I do the lamb service each Sunday, that's almost like stage magic or almost like parlor magic, and it involves people being able to see what you've got in your hand. But I've got a jewel case here, and that is empty now. I'm going to put that right over here. Inside are 3 coins. And the reason I thought immediately of doing this trick is because, well, the lesson goes along with the message that I'm going to be presenting today. But I remember that my mother bought this coin trick for me. Now, as I said, my parents were, and my mother was not wealthy, but she made a lot of sacrifices for me, and she paid for me and Danny to take guitar lessons. She paid for us to take karate lessons, and when we played baseball, she made sure that we had cleats and a glove, and that it had our name on the back of our uniform and everything. She was such a blessing, and she worked so very hard. She worked over 35 years at Kroger, and people still talk about her and remember. So I remember her. She used to check out our groceries. She used to, when she started, there was no conveyor belt. They just put the things up on a shelf right here and to her left, and they'd type in buttons, and they had to pull down a handle every time they entered a product number and then a price, and it would make the tape, and it would wind up with a long piece of receipt tape. But I remember after I decided that I liked magic or illusions, tricks and things, I remember going to the magic shop that was in Birmingham. It was the only one I knew in the whole state, and it's not even there anymore. It may be another. But she took me there and said I could spend $50 and I could buy as much magic as $50 would buy, and that would be my Christmas. So Mother was not only interested in making sure that we had nice clothes to wear and blue jeans. I remember she used to buy blue jeans for us that you could sand a car with it. I mean, you really could. You could just take those blue jeans. They were rough, and it'd take quite a few washings before they'd get where you didn't scrape and make rasping sounds as you walked. And then she'd buy them too big, and then roll up the cuffs on them, on the leg of the cuffs, and roll them up about 3 times. And by the end of the summer, those jeans were too small. And then when it wore holes in the knees, she had those iron-on patches. But she also bought me magic, which is just a frivolous thing and not necessary. You didn't have to have it. But many years later, when we lived in Memphis, there was a place on Poplar Avenue there in Memphis in a shopping center called The Fun Shop. And I met some very interesting and wonderful people there. But it became one of my most favorite places in Memphis. Mother was visiting us for my birthday when we lived in Memphis. And she told me she'd buy me a magic trick. Well, this coin trick is called the copper, silver, and brass trick because it involves 3 coins, these 3 coins right here. There's nothing else in my hands except these 3 coins. And this is a Kennedy half dollar, and it is the silver coin. I do know that this is a Mexican coin. It's a 20 centavo piece. 20 centavo. 20 cents evidently. And it's made out of copper. It's like a huge penny. And you can see that. It's like a huge penny. So that's the copper. And then the Kennedy half is made of silver. It's got a little silver in it. Not as much as I guess American coins used to have. And this is a Chinese coin. And I have no idea what its name is or what it's called. But it's a black coin. It's been painted black in the center. It's got a square hole in the center. Actually a square frame with a round hole. And you could thread a necklace or a bead through there. But it's obviously got some Chinese or Mandarin writing on it, and it is made of brass. It is made of brass. And so really the point is not what kind of coins there are, but this one is made out of copper, and this is made out of silver, and this one is made out of brass. The copper, silver, and brass coin trick. The lesson of this is that we really, with all that we do to try to discern the will of God and to follow God and to be willing to believe in God and to having seen the light that He is and that He's shown us, I would have never been able to be the kind of person to give any impression that I always know what God is thinking or what He's doing, or that He speaks to me with an audible voice giving me the directions that He wants me to have. We have to trust Him. Now that's what this is about. I'm going to take the silver coin, nothing else in my hands, but I'm going to put the silver coin from my left hand into my right. I'm going to take the copper coin and put it right here in my right hand. And I'm going to take the brass coin and put it right there in my right hand. I do everything I can to see if I can follow God's hands and watch what God is doing, and to be perceptive and to look around, to be sensitive to His leadership. And I still miss His will often. And I can never say with great certainty that I know just exactly always what He's doing. But let me tell you this, God's always doing something. God's always at work. God is always working in our behalf. And sometimes we have been perhaps frustrated during this time of isolation. I heard someone say, well, do something even if it's wrong. Well, that's just the worst advice. Do something. Just do something. At least we're doing something, even if it's wrong. Well, don't ever do anything wrong. Just to be doing something, but thinking you might shake something loose. Now watch this. I'm going to dump these coins into my left hand right there. Now, as you can see, what I want to do then is I'm going to reach into my pocket, and I'm going to pull out a coin. But actually, it's not a different coin or a different kind of coin or something other than copper, silver, or brass. It is actually, look right here. In my left hand now, there are only two coins. There's the brass coin, and the copper coin. This is the silver coin. Did you notice that? I gave the appearance, or if you were watching closely, you'd see that it appeared that I put all three coins in my left hand, and then suddenly there's one in my pocket. Now I'm going to take the silver coin, and that's the Kennedy half. And I'm going to take that, and there's nothing else in my left hand. I'm going to put it right there in my left hand. As I said, I try to follow God and see what He's doing at all times. I'm going to close that hand, and I'm going to take the copper and the brass coin. Brass coin and the copper coin. I'm going to take both of those right there, and I'm going to put them into my pocket, in my right pants pocket. Now, if you were watching very carefully, you might think that I put the copper and the brass coin in my right hand pocket of my pants. But I just pulled out my hand out of that pocket, and there is the Kennedy $50. Over here in this hand are the brass and the copper. Now one more time, watch this very carefully. One more move, one more part of this illustration. Here's the copper and the brass in my left hand. If you can see both those coins there. And I'm going to take the silver coin and I'm going to put it right there. Now you can see there's nothing else in my hand. And in my left hand is the copper, the brass, and the silver coin. And I'm just going to close my hand very, very carefully. Now, I'm going to reach right in here and I'm going to take one of those coins out. I'm going to take that coin and place it in my pocket. Can you see what it is? Look right there. Only one coin. And I'm going to take it and put it in my pocket. But as soon as I put my hand in my pocket, I want you to see that there's a silver coin right there. There's the Kennedy half. And in my pocket are the copper and the brass coins. Now, having videotaped this, you can watch this again. Well, it just tickled me if you would watch it again just to see what's going on, see if you can figure out which is where. Sometimes I say, Lord, I can't follow you. I don't know exactly what you're doing. And I thought you did this, but you did that. God, I was trying to figure you out. I did my best to figure you out, and I was wrong. God says, well, that's all right. You just hang on for dear life. And God says, what you're going to have to do is trust me. You're going to have to trust me. You see, I can't trust in my ability to always do what I should, or to always know what I should know. I can't trust in me. I can't trust in my faith. I can't trust in my abilities. But I can trust God. And I found that that is really the only solution. And that's the only path. Because I can watch God very carefully in everything around me, but I know He's everywhere. But sometimes I still mistake what He's up to. Well, Danny's going to sing for us now. Thank you for your patience with that. And after he sings, I have a brief message for you. I'm so glad to be here with you. Next, I want to announce this before Danny sings. Next Sunday, May 17th, we're going to meet here at the church at 11 o'clock. Come to church. We're going to keep socially distant. We're going to keep 6 feet away from each other. You can wear gloves or a mask if it makes you feel comfortable. Personally, I'm just going to stay away. No hugging and handshaking. We're not going to be holding hymnals or passing offering plates. We're going to do everything I can for everybody who comes here to be as safe as they need to be. But only come if you feel comfortable with doing that. Do not feel don't feel compelled to come unless you feel comfortable with being with us this early. Next Sunday, 11 o'clock here at the church, Walnut Grove Baptist Church will congregate in the worship center in the sanctuary at 11 o'clock, and we'll have our first service after the lockdown.
The song I want to do this morning is dedicated to mothers. Just as my brother mentioned earlier, so often in our lives we saw our mothers sacrifice for us. And the odd thing about it is probably the majority of the sacrifices she made we never knew about. And she did things without our knowledge of it that made our lives better because she was willing to give of herself. And I know your mother was the same way, and I know that each of you probably have experienced that and can think of that. And remember those things today. If you have an opportunity to see your mother, understand that as the blessing that it is. If your mother has already gone on to be with the Lord, then you can think back to the times when she did things for you and made sacrifices for you. This song is about a man whose mother made sacrifices and did things for him, and the effect that it had on his life. Mama always got up early, and she never went to bed till late. Yet I never heard her complaining about her family of 8. There were times she should have been sleeping, yet late in the midnight hour, she'd get down on her knees and you could hear her say, Lord, fill them with your power. Mama liked to burn the midnight oil down on her knees in prayer. And if you ask her why she did it, she'd say she did it 'cause she cared. Mama knew that Jesus was waiting when she knelt by a rocking chair. Oh, I'm glad my mama was willing to burn the midnight oil in prayer. Now Mama's gone to be with Jesus. I've got a family of my own. Yet whenever the clock strikes midnight, you'll find me all alone. That's when I start to call upon Jesus for his wisdom and his power. 'Cause it seems that he loves to hear a daddy's prayer, even in the midnight hour. Mama liked to burn the midnight oil down on her knees in prayer. And if you ask her why she did it, she'd say she did it 'cause Jesus was waiting when she knelt by a rocking chair. Oh, I'm glad my mama was willing to burn the midnight oil in prayer. Years from now, when my own little boy has a family of his own, will he kneel out and pray when the hour is late and pass the legacy on? Mama liked to burn the midnight oil down on her knees in prayer. If you ask her why she did it, she'd say she did it 'cause she cared. Mama knew that Jesus was waiting when she knelt by a rocking chair. Oh, I'm glad my mama was willing to burn the midnight oil in prayer. 'Cause now there's a daddy who's willing to burn the midnight oil in prayer. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Andy. Was that a pan flute you were playing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're good. You're so good. Multi-talented. When Andy sent out his one call, and thanks to all of you, we've had so many. I have to say that some of my favorites, I enjoyed all of them, but Brian and Carice did a wonderful job this week. I think theirs was the last guest one call that was sent out. Them and the girls did a good job. It's hard to kind of do that under 2 minutes. Randy and Danny and Andy all made one. I asked Andy if he felt comfortable to share that he began working for the Remington Firearms Company locally on the 27th. So if you need any guns, see Andy. He's a gun runner now. And he can fix you up. Just very interesting work, and it's something that he was already interested in, and it's just a blessing. And he did a good job at Volt, and Volt's just shaking things up and changing things around, and that sometimes happens. They're liable to do the same thing to me at NASA. But we've been going strong at trying to fix computers. Everybody who works for NASA, the different centers from Ames out in California and Armstrong, all the way to Virginia and Langley, they've been in various stages. I think at least everybody's at least stage 3. Marshall over in Huntsville is at stage 3. Some of them are at stage 4, and that means no, you can't come on the base at all. But at stage 3, sometimes we have to send somebody there to get their computer fixed. You can't fix it over the phone. But all of these NASA people all over the country have been working from home and took their computers home and are trying to hook up printers and trying to figure out problems, how to have meetings using one of the first things they did is everybody started installing Zoom. Zoom is that it's a third-party product for chatting with each other, being able to see each other, and now I'm spending most of my time every day uninstalling Zoom from NASA people's computer. Yeah, they didn't have permission to do that. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. So now they've all been sent threatening emails saying, no, don't do that. Zoom is one of those things, it's just so shot full of holes. There's just no way in the world it could ever possibly be made secure. And these people are talking about jet fuel and rocket design and things like that. So Zoom doesn't work. But I have Zoom on my computer, my personal computer at home, just not on my NASA computer. And one of the biggest things is they want to go down to Office Depot and buy a printer, and
they can, you can plug your printer into your laptop, or you can just let it be a wireless printer and just print to it wirelessly without having any connection at all. And so I get a ticket that says, well, I need to help installing a printer. Now, when everybody was on base, that was a big no-no. You cannot attach your Walmart printer to a NASA computer. But now they're saying, okay, go ahead. And so I first asked them, I said, you want to do this wired or wirelessly? They said, we want it to be wireless. And I say, of course you do. And that's almost like sorcery. It's just like magic to connect a wireless Office Depot printer to a secure NASA computer. And it just, well, anyway, I feel so much better from having shared that with you, but that's enough therapy for me today. This is a momentous time for me in my personal life. I've just been reflecting about things, and I'm thinking, man, this is an unusual time. This may be my end of days. I don't know. On May 10th of 1970, I became a Christian at the Flint Baptist Church. Remember very clearly the day and the time. I can remember almost every aspect of that day at the Flint Baptist Church. Brother Steve Tucker was the interim pastor. He played nose guard for the Decatur Red Raiders. He was a senior at Decatur High School, and he was the interim pastor at the little church. He had also worked at Kroger's, and he had helped what we used to call a sack boy. I never hear that. I don't think as I've ever been at a retail store anymore, I don't think it's a sack boy or a sack girl that worked for Kroger. I don't know what they call them anymore.
It's not politically correct.
It's not to be a... But
Courtesy clerks.
Courtesy clerks, perhaps.
That's what they are.
Danny and I had to go to school to learn how to put groceries in a sack, and they had those big paper sacks that were kind of rectangular and made of very hard grade. Probably took a whole tree, probably had to kill a whole tree for every one of those sacks, but we had about 20 or 30 different sizes. I used to know what they were, a number 1, a number 2, a number 5. Bring back a bale of those number 8 sacks, and so I used to know what they all were. But we had to, and then before we could be hired, we had to sack some groceries, and they had to pass inspection. They had to go, had to put stuff in there so that sack remained firm and kept its shape. You didn't want it bulging out or anything like that. I always put the bread and the other things that are mashable on top. But there was a young man his name was Steve Tucker. He and his family lived here in Decatur. His mother was blind. I met his mom and dad later and used to do some yard work for them. But Brother Steve, of course, came to know Mother, and Mother, we didn't go to church very much, hardly ever, but he began preaching at Flint and became an interim pastor, which means not the real pastor, but just the temporary pastor. He later became the 100% real pastor. And she said, you ought to go hear Steve. He's preaching in our church. And Mother was trying to get me in church, which is odd, is that none of us went to church. But she used to be able to take us to Sunday school, but once I got to be a teenager, that didn't work anymore. She used to take Danny and I and drop us off at church, and she wouldn't even come herself. Or sometimes she would come later for what we called preaching, staying for preaching. It was always terrible when I came out of Sunday school, having endured Sunday school, and coming out into the back parking lot there at Flint, and see my mother getting out of the car all dressed up in her Sunday. I said, oh no, we're staying for preaching. We didn't do that very often, but she wanted me to hear Steve, and I did. I went to hear him. And probably the first preacher that I ever listened to. I admired him for being a great athlete. Every Sunday afternoon, Coach Webb would go over the film of the Friday night game, and you could see I had several Flint friends who played. Danny Hightower played also for Decatur. And we could see several of our friends who played for Decatur and watched them play football. And also I was going to start playing football soon. I might play against some of those guys. But I heard Steve preach the gospel, and that's what made the difference. And so on the second Sunday in May, which happened to be Mother's Day, I don't remember what I got for my mother that year, or even if I didn't have a job, so I don't know if that age, if I got anything for Mother's Day when I was young. I don't remember celebrating Mother's Day or how we did that, but I do remember that that is the day, May the 10th, same as today's date, 1970. It was 50 years ago. And on that same day, I know that God not only saved me, but He called me into the gospel ministry, because only a few weeks after that, Brother Steve asked me to share my testimony. I didn't know what a testimony was, but it was on a Wednesday night. I preached on John's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 6, where Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me." I'd never read the Bible before, but I became a voracious reader of the Scriptures, and when I became a Christian, as soon as I became a Christian, never could put it down. But I remember preaching. I didn't know what a testimony was, so I preached everything that I thought I knew about John 14:6, but I actually started out by calling it John 6:14. I remember that just as clearly as possible. I always went over everything that I ever said. After I'd spoken, I wanted to make sure that I improved the next time and that I did my very best, and I do recall that. And so I began speaking and preaching and giving my testimony whenever I could, and God began to open up doors and opportunities. Other people, other churches, other youth groups wanted to hear what I had to say about my faith, my newfound faith. And so I mark that not only as the time in which I was saved, but 50 years ago, today, I became a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I celebrate today 50 years of ministry. Very grateful for that. My dad wasn't too keen about me becoming a preacher. I don't guess he had any designs on what he wanted me to be, but he didn't feel like there was much money in being a preacher or how in the world I was ever going to take care of myself. He changed his mind about things a little bit later on as he himself became dedicated to the Lord. Mother was always very proud, though, as she checked out people's groceries. So many of her people coming through the line somehow or another had heard, and they would say, they would know, they called her Liz at work, said, "I hear that your son is making a preacher." And she would just nod and smile. Said, yeah, and me or Mother or Dad or my brother, either one, had any idea about how to make a preacher or what it took to make a preacher, but I was making one anyway. And there was nobody more proud in the entire world of me making a preacher than my grandmother, and that was my mom's mom. Well, I want to speak with you for just a minute about Luke's Gospel, chapter 15. Luke's Gospel, chapter 15, when Jesus was speaking and teaching. And you'd think that, anything or everything that Jesus said would just receive universal acceptance. But there were just a lot of people whenever Jesus spoke. There were many people who always took issue with everything that He said, disagreed with everything that He said, disapproved of everything that He was and that He stood for. Well, that was one of these occasions here. In Luke's Gospel, and Luke later became the traveling companion, he was the beloved physician who traveled around with Paul and kept Paul kind of sewed together and on his feet so that he could minister. Evidently, Luke, being a scientist of his day, or at least someone who was interested in medicine or herbs and spices and remedies and potions and how the human body worked and how the world worked, he felt that it was very important that someone would record the story of Jesus in an orderly, factual, and precise manner. And so that's what he does in Luke's Gospel in chapter 1. He's writing to a man named Theophilus. And he says, somebody ought to put this in order, spell it out. So as they went along, Luke took notes. He ran into believers who had met Jesus and knew Jesus. He might have even talked with Mary, the mother of Jesus, as well. But he talked with Christians as they traveled all over the world, and he put down in his writing here. He probably had some other documents. He may have even had a copy of Matthew's Gospel or Mark's Gospel to use as a source. There are many things in Luke's Gospel that are similar to the recordings of Mark or Matthew. But when I was in college, I learned that there was possibly also a document that was called by Bible scholars Q, and it was possibly a document that we don't have anymore. But that's the reason that Matthew, Mark, and Luke called the Synoptic Gospels. Why? They're similar. That's what the word synoptic means. Similar Gospels. And so they may have been drawing from a document written by someone whom we don't even know who they were, someone who is that mysterious person. But there's no evidence scholastically or theologically or at all, historically, that there was ever a gospel that was called, actually, Q ever existed. Anyway, the Holy Spirit did it all, put it all together, and it's for our benefit. Here in Luke 15:1, it says, "Then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners to hear him." Publicans, they're tax collectors. They were traders. They were Jewish people who worked for the Roman government to collect tax money from the Jewish people. They were just abhorred. They were thought of as, there were the publicans and sinners. In other words, they were sinners too, publicans. They considered them to be sinners, but they were such terrible, awful, repugnant sinners that they had to have their own classification. They didn't say, oh, all the sinners came to hear Jesus, and among those sinners were publicans. Oh, there were publicans and sinners. We need to describe them separately. But they came to hear Jesus. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured. You know, murmur is one of those onomatopoetic words. An onomatopoeia word is a word that sounds like the word crash. Crash sounds like, or pop. It's spelled just like it sounds. Randy was talking about the old Batman. Remember when they used to have fights? There was pow and zonk and wham, and they would have big signs on there just being as campy as possible. Those words are onomatopoeia, and so the word murmurs, that's what that word, it's murmur, 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 murmur. And it just sounds just exactly like what people just badmouth them. They murmured. The Pharisees and the scribes, those were the religious leaders, the religious experts, the highbrow spiritual people of of the synagogue and of the temple. They murmured, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." During this time of the coronavirus and our changing lives and changing worlds, I hope that you have been encouraging. I hope that you've been a person of encouragement. I hope that you've lifted people up, that you've given people a good word, that you've done your best to be the kind of person who helps people and encourages people and makes people smile and tells people it's going to be all right. Be a calming influence in their life. Be someone who shares optimism and faith and confidence in God. But that's not always the case. It doesn't matter how hard you've been trying or what you've been doing or how you've been leading your life. You've probably had someone in your life who was critical of you. And there may be people that you have known that have done nothing but complain. Nothing but complain. I saw something, I reposted it on Facebook this week. It says if you complain, then your life is going to be filled with more and more things to complain about. But if you're upbeat and optimistic, then you're going to have more upbeat and optimistic things that fill your life. Now that's not the Bible, that's not any great philosophy, but the reason I posted it is because I believe that's true. I believe that negativity draws negativity. I believe that positivity and faith and confidence and assurance, that they draw in kind. Now, here they were murmuring and they were complaining, and maybe you haven't seen yourself as someone who's complained about Jesus or that you've debated him or been critical of him. But you see, these people, these scribes and the Pharisees, they knew without any doubt that when the Messiah came, he was coming for them. And then when the Messiah came, that he would be their best friend. Then when the Messiah came, that the scribes and the Pharisees would be his best friends and his best buddies. And they would be tight. When the Messiah came, he's coming for people like us. He's looking for people like us. And when the Messiah gets here, the promised one of God, the one that all the prophets have been saying he's coming, well, he's coming for us. But here was Jesus and all the publicans and the sinners were flocking to him because they wanted desperately to believe that what he was saying about God was true. The publicans and the sinners never heard anything good from the religious leaders of their day. Have you ever heard anybody preach about hell, like you're going to hell, you're going to hell, and I'm glad you're going to hell? Well, a lot of people are like that. A lot of people, I heard a professor one time, he says, when you preach about heaven, your face ought to just glow with the rapture and the smile and the glories of all the treasures that you think that might be in the glories of heaven. And he says, when you preach about hell, your normal face will do. Jesus was drawing people who needed to hear a good word. Now, if people are avoiding you, it may not be because you might give them, you might get the coronavirus from them. There might be people in your life who are avoiding you because you're negative and you're critical and you complain and you're judgmental. And you're always looking down your nose at people, and you have a list of things that you think that they've done that you wouldn't do it that way. You'd do it differently if it was you. You've disagreed with them, and you're critical of them. Well, Jesus knew what they were thinking. He said, this man receives sinners, and he eats with them. Well, that's even worse. Jesus spoke this parable unto them, saying, what man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lose one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness, and go after that which is lost until he find it? He says, this is a story. Man's got 100 sheep. One strays away. He says, now, all of these people knew about shepherds. You can still go all over the land of Israel today, and there are sheep and shepherds everywhere. It must have been 10 times or 100 times more in Jesus' day. If you were not a shepherd, you still knew a lot of shepherds, and you knew a lot about shepherding, because raising sheep and rams and ewes was central to their religion. And they clothed themselves with the wool, and they ate the meat. It was just something to know about. Jesus knew that they understood what he was talking about. If a man has 100 sheep, and one of them, he says, he leaves the 99. They didn't stray. They're good sheep. They're all in place. They're doing just exactly what they ought to be doing. But the shepherd leaves them and goes to find the straying sheep. And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I say unto you that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repents, more than over 99 just persons which need no repentance. Jesus then shares some of the most beloved parables about this same theme, and the woman who lost the coin, about the son who ran away from home, the prodigal son. Those are next in this 15th chapter. But the important thing is here is that, I miss being able to do what we do as Baptists, to do what we do every Sunday as Christians. But listen, getting together on Sunday and singing songs and receiving an offering, having lessons in Sunday school, and having fellowship with each other is all an important part of our faith and who we are as Christians. But that's not the most important thing. I remember when I was in seminary, a big saying was, and I guess I heard it till I got tired of it, it says, the main thing in church, they were teaching us about church, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. You know what the main thing is? Jesus said in Luke's gospel, this is what he said after the story of Zacchaeus. He said, for the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. Jesus, why did you come? Well, so we could have a good time together. No, Jesus said, that's not why I came. Jesus, why did you come? So that I could be with all the spiritual up and ups and all of the church people and have a good time and have fun and be refreshed and be uplifted and feel good. And Jesus said, no, that's not why I came. That's not why I came. That's part of it. And that's a good. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing or condemning that. I'm just saying, you need to understand what the main thing is. You know what? I believe we're getting more of the main thing done during this time of lockdown. You know what I'm finding and looking around, a lot of people are broadcasting. There are more people that are hearing the gospel, more people that are listening to church and watching the church on their computers and on their radios and their televisions than they were before lockdown.
Yeah.
I looked last week and adding up the people who had viewed just our service last Sunday, added them up between those who went to Andy's Facebook page and mine, there were 112 people. I've never been at a service here at Walnut Grove where we had 112 people. Someone might say, well, I'm not on Facebook, so what good is that to me? You mean if we're saying, you're part of the 99, what good is it to you? That's what the 199 were saying, weren't it? That's what people who were that's what the scribes and the Pharisees were saying. They were part of the 99 sheep, and they were saying, what good, if you're meeting with the publicans and sinners, what good is that to us? Well, if you're not on Facebook, what if we came to your house and had a service just for you? But those 112 people that watched our program and watched our broadcast last Sunday, we didn't do anything for them. The math doesn't work there. There's you, that's one, and there's 112 over here. We've been sharing the gospel and sharing our faith. We've been demonstrating our interest in the main thing. We've been saying, you know, the most important thing in the whole world is not our congregation. That's the 99. That one that's out there that don't ever come to church, that never did. That didn't come to church when we weren't under quarantine. They didn't come to church when it was perfectly fine. They didn't come to church when nobody ever heard of the coronavirus. Jesus said, that's who I came for. That's who I came for. And that's what's important. You know, I think that we think a lot of times like the 99. I looked up this verse. It's in Isaiah 55. You know it too, where God says through the prophet Isaiah, God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Did you think the silver coin was in my pocket or in my hand? Did you think the copper and the brass coin was in my hand or in my pocket? We don't always know what God's doing, but let me tell you what. I've learned enough about me that me and God don't think alike. That a lot of things I like, God doesn't like. A lot of things I don't like, God likes. That's why I have to make Him Lord of my life. I can't go through my life doing what I think is best, or doing what comes natural or normal to me. If I have a thought in my brain, my first thing is to think, you know, that's my thought. That's probably not God's thought. This is my way. This is the way I would do it. That's probably not the way God would do it. My whole life, I have to deal with that conflict and that contradiction. If you're going through your life just deciding what to do and making up your mind and making the choice and looking at things through your eyes, you're going to completely, absolutely miss the will of God. You know what Jesus said? Jesus said, all right, what does everybody think if you're first in line? What does everybody think about being first in line? And everybody thought, well, I know what it means to be first in line. I like to be first. I like to be up front. Jesus said, okay, here's the way it's going to be though. You're last. The first is going to be last. The last is going to be first. Jesus said, you know, if you come into a party or a big soiree, a big congregation, He says, you know what you ought to do? Don't go sit at the head of the table. Go sit in the corner. Go sit in the corner. Go sit over by yourself. Be away. Jesus said, if you want to preserve your life, He said, you can just do everything you possibly can to make sure that you live and that you have life and that you're healthy and wealthy and wise. Jesus said, if you put all of your effort into living, He says, you're going to lose your life. But He says, if you give your life away, then you'll gain it. And the disciples began to say, you know what? I don't think we see the things the way you do. I think your thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Your ways higher than our ways. I think, Jesus, that we're going to have to trust you and believe in you and follow you. And we're going to have to completely give up our way of thinking and our way of looking at things. Our opinion doesn't matter anymore. Our ideas, our thoughts. That's very important. You see, we church people, we're going to meet next Sunday and we're going to try to congregate. But everything about church is about the 99 sheep. Jesus said, you don't know why I came? To seek and to save that which was lost. Well, another reason this is a momentous week for me is that last year on May the 14th, I was working out in the front yard and I began to feel a little twinge in my chest, and it was getting worse and worse and worse, and so I drove myself to Parkview Hospital, and I was having a heart attack. I remember the doctor, everybody in that emergency room was standing around me, poking things into me and putting things under my tongue and things like that. I remember the doctor standing down at the foot of my bed, and I could see my daughter coming in the door through the emergency room door back behind him. I remember him looking at me. I'll never forget his voice. He says, Mr. Bain, you're having a heart attack. If I could have, I would have said, no kidding. I was pretty sure I was. I drove myself foolishly to the hospital, though, parked right next to the emergency room door. There was a parking space right there waiting for me. And I was making it all right. I really didn't feel all that bad. But I remember when I crossed the threshold, when I walked past the threshold and those automatic doors opened up, I remember that I had my first labor pain. The triage nurse looked up and saw the look on my face, and I was beginning to perspire, and I probably was white as a sheet. And she looked up at me, and the emergency room was filled with people, and she looked up at me, didn't know me from Adam's house cat, and said, what's wrong? And I said, chest pains. They had me in a wheelchair in just a minute, May 14th. Well, if I live through May 14th, I will have lived after a heart attack for a year. I thank God for that. Thank God for my mother and all that she did for us and during her life. I miss her every day. If your mother is still about on this side of glory, be sure to honor her and all mothers today. God bless you all. If you can come out and be with us next Sunday at 11 o'clock. We're not having Sunday school, no nursery, no children's church, no lamb service. Just having worship service and staying 6 feet apart from each other. Wear your mask and your gloves if you want to. Don't if you don't. But don't be grabbing anybody, touching anybody. Don't be rubbing up against anybody. God bless you all. Have a wonderful rest of the Lord's day today.